All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're very lucky today to have Andrew Kavanagh as our presenter. Andrew is a digital artist, a Photoshop and Adobe Lightroom tutor, and he also does photo compositing and photo retouching in Los Angeles, California. Andrew is also an Adobe community expert and an Adobe Express ambassador. He also runs the Photoshop and Lightroom group and the AI art and digital art group on Facebook and on LinkedIn. Andrew presents and hosts live video events weekly or bi-weekly focused on digital art and Adobe apps like Photoshop and Lightroom, Adobe Firefly, and Adobe Express. So this guy knows a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of questions. If you have questions, feel free to ask them and raise your hand and type them in the chat and all that stuff. So Andrew, I'm going to send it over to you and let you tell people a little bit more about yourself.
You said it all.
Okay, good. Then you can just start with your presentation.
So yeah, maybe I'll just jump on in and feel free to ask questions. So let's see, do share here. You need to allow.
Oh, I need to release the screen. Sorry about that.
Yep.
I'm getting things down. I'm a little new at this.
No problem.
All right, you got it now?
Let me try now. Yes. So entire screen. And what do you see? Do you see the little astronaut?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah.
Sorry, I just muted you, Andrew. I'm gonna unmute you. Come on. Mute all actually mutes the
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, good, thank you.
So you should see multiple images, and then you do see the layers panel on the right side?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah. So I wanted to go over some of the kind of basic features that tend to use generative AI in Photoshop first, and then get into more of the fun one, the generate image feature. And so as an example, I'll just have this. And you know, I'm a tutor, so I'm going to tell you what I use, keyboard shortcuts, etc., as I go. So hopefully that'll be helpful for everybody. So the first thing is when I am working, I see that you can see that I have a lot of images open, but I like to be focused. So I will tend to just hit the F key, which then gives me this neutral gray background, which is also good for color correction. And what I do is I work on one image at a time. This little thing here is the contextual taskbar, which you will see has become very helpful for working on images, especially for generative AI. And so first thing is I want to just show with, say, removing generative fill. Nowadays, if you just take a simple like lasso tool and you make a selection, and you want the selection to be a bit around the subject, the person, because it needs to read the background elements, background image. And then you'll notice after I make that simple selection in this taskbar, it already says generative fill. So if I click generative fill, it's then asking what would you like to generate. So typically you can type in a subject that you might want to replace it with, or in this case, if I just hit the generate button on the right side, you'll see the progress bar up top. It will just read the background and try to do a seamless, weird. So this is kind of what I love about this is what I love about, you know, Photoshop and the whole generative AI stuff. It's supposed to just fill it with the background, And then for some reason, it just came up with its own idea. It's kind of like like some type of bottle with some weird modern stand. And then if I go here, you get a variation. So it's created a cactus inside a basket or something. And then it's created another strange person, which is interesting. Um, okay, so, and then you'll notice if I go to if you look in the right side in the layers panel, when I turn that on, you have your own generative fill kind of a layer, and it has that kind of special icon for it. And it has a built-in layer mask. So in this case, I'm going to delete that. I don't know why it's doing that. Just going to delete that. Weird. Okay. Every time I try to delete it, it tries to open up this. I don't want to save it. I'm just going to right click and choose delete layer since it's acting so stubborn. Okay, so I'll try that again. Maybe this time, for the sake of showing what it can do, I will make the selection, and this time I will choose a subject. Anyone want to either type in the chat or say out loud what kind of subject they would like to replace this with? Make this fun. Any ideas?
Fairy with wings.
What with wings?
A fairy, like a
fair.
wonderful fairy with wings and
That's good.
little dots on it.
Is that Hannah? Thank you. So I type in fairy with wings, and then when I hit generate, reads that area, and it should create a fairy with wings standing in front of a seamless yellow. A little distorted, but at least it took the subject. Whoa. Faces and the hands are a bit funky, a little strange, but at least it's focusing on that subject. So I thought this was the newest model of generative AI. These are a bit scary to me.
I would agree with that. That it seems to me that if you asked it to do fairy with wings, it would get you something a little more animated as opposed to a human distorted.
Right. Or something cute at least. These are quite distorted. So,
Maybe colorful fairy with dots and wings or something more, because usually they say you do it few things like what is the subject, what are they doing.
that's when I generate an image. This is just for the generative fill. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep that simple. But yeah, thanks for the theme suggestion. It's kind of creating strange results, but it's all right. Move with the flow. At least it's letting me delete this time. I think. Yeah. Okay. There you go. Okay. So let me see if I have a better example. Okay. So this might be a better example in general. Okay. So we have this kind of Irish countryside type of image. Now, if I do the same idea where I just take a lasso tool and I go around, say, this horse here, if I click generative fill and then I hit generate, you see the progress bar up top. It should read the flow of the back. Yeah, see, so it reads the flow of the background and it seamlessly integrates it and retouches it over. And that one I think is the best, the third one. So yeah, you'll notice that the properties panel will pop up. You get 3 variations. So there's 1, 2, 3, slightly different. And you'll also know down in the contextual taskbar, it says 3 of 3. So you can just hit the right arrow and it'll cycle through. So this, it does a better job. And the thing that I like, and let me zoom in a little bit. I zoom in here. So we see, 2 horses over here, and then there's this fence behind. Now, if I go here, and I go around them in the grass and the fence, and then hit generative fill, hit generate. What I'm hoping it'll do, which it tends to do pretty well, which it just did, is it reads that information and it will follow through on the way that the fence is built. So it does a pretty good job at keeping it looking realistic. So if I, had sent this to someone, I don't think anyone would be able to see that the fence was, retouched or, generative filled. So I think that's quite nice. And then let's see, I'm just going to select those two generative fill layers and a new background layer, doing Command E, merging it as one. I'm then now going to show some of the features of the generative expand. So when you have an image like this, and then you choose the crop tool, and then in general, anytime I use any of the tools in Photoshop, I always look up at the options bar. So you always want to make sure your options are the way you want them to be. So in this case, when I choose the crop tool, you'll see on the top middle right, you have different fill options. So the first one is background default, then you have generative expand and content aware fill. So if I choose generative expand, and then holding the option key on a Mac, Alt on a PC, go to the middle left kind of tab. And as I pull that out, it'll pull it out for both sides. And at first it looks like it's not doing anything, but you'll notice at the options bar up top, you have different icons. So if you hit the check mark, you're saying apply, and it's generating. It should read the flow of this landscape image and rebuild it out, which I think it did a great job. So, before you have that, and then it seamlessly integrates the fence and the way the fence goes out. And then, as I said, if you go to the properties panel, you can click on the different variations. And so you'll notice that like the fence is slightly different. Here, this one, it created an extension of the fence with little kind of bushes behind. But the second one added a whole new kind of selection of trees. And then if you go to the right, that's a different kind of fence and a different kind of bush variation. So let me also look to the right. So if I go to the right, same idea, you'll see that it extended it. This is very nice. Like the second one, the integration of the fence looks very realistic. And then here it's similar, but it built like a bunch of trees behind it. So I would say maybe the second one is pretty good. So yeah, so that's generative fill, and also, generative fill and generative expand. Any questions so far about that process? Okay. So let's see. I still
Well,
want to.
actually, I do have a question. So the generative fill when you're cropping and the generative expand and cropping is the same thing or different?
No. So generative fill is like when I did the lasso tool. So when I had the original image and I took the lasso tool and I made it a selection,
Right.
you'll see that generative fill comes up in the contextual taskbar. So then if I click that and then I hit generate, that's where it reads the information around the horse and will fill it in to retouch it out. Yeah, see, like that. So it does kind of like a seamless retouch. And once again, as I said before, it creates a new generative fill layer. You'll see this kind of little sparkles here in the preview, and it has a built-in layer mask. Now, one question people tend to ask when you do something like this, if you wanted to move this around, so if I took the move tool, now if you move this around, obviously once you move it away from that area, you'll see the original horse behind it. But you'll also notice that there's like a hard edge. So let me bring it up here. So if I bring it up here, you'll see that there's a hard edge and it's pretty much just picking up that information to fill it. So, if you create, let me just create like a new element. So like that expand. So you can use generative fill to get rid of, but you can also add. So let's see, what kind of bird would be flying in the sky? Should I say hawk?
A hawk. I like a hawk better.
Okay, hawk. So I just say hawk, and then I hit generate, and then on its own layer, it'll create this generative AI. Where'd it go? Oh, that's weird. It put it behind. So yeah, you just got to keep an eye on the layers. It put it behind the original generative expand that I did. So there it is. That's the hawk. And then if I go to properties panel again, you can see that you get 3 variations. Pretty good. I think the first one's pretty successful. Now, what I was trying to explain before is you have a built-in layer mask, but the minute that you move it around, you'll notice you can, if I zoom in, you'll see that the background is now darker than the sky. If I go back to Command Z, you'll see it's blended nicely, right? But the minute I move it, it's a different kind of tonal range. So technically, if you wanted to move it around, you could, move it to another area. You could go over to the layer mask built in the layers panel. And then of course you could either select it with the magic wand tool or just brush it away. But just be aware that if it's here originally, trying to find out where it blended in. I'll just do Command Z a few times. But if you'll see that it blends nicely in its original place, but the minute you move it, you'll notice those surrounding pixels that are a different tonal range. Okay, any other questions related to that? No, okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep.
What about resolution?
I believe it's set to something like 2048 pixels. And I believe that is something they're working on to make it better and better. This original image, it's pretty large, 77 by 39, but it's only at 72 resolution. Should be fine. But the one thing to be aware of, that's a good question, is when you're doing this type of work on images that are going for print, you might have to, do a trial print to see if it's integrating well, or if it looks like it's kind of blurry around the edges. Okay, so let me see. Now, if I turn off all these, or even just go back to my history, go to the original image. Another thing I wanted to show, besides, generative fill, generative expand, there's also, where is it? Underneath the selections for like spot healing, healing brush, all that, there's now a remove tool. And the remove tool is quite nice. So I'm just using my right bracket to make the brush larger. And then when I go and I just brush over the horse here, it immediately kind of erases it. Now, the thing to be aware of with that is, just like using the spot healing brush, you'll notice in the layers panel, it does not create an extra new layer. So you can't, move it around and you don't get variations. Whatever you do, like here in the top right, that's it. But it does a great job and it's good for, so my take is, if you're going to clean up like spots on a portrait or in the sky or something, then typically you would go to the spot healing brush and do, little kind of spotting. Like here, it looks like a kind of camera spot, and of course use a larger brush for bigger spots. But then if you're going to do a bigger area and you want it to be like a stronger remove, then I go to the remove tool. So this right bracket a little bit larger, I'm going to get rid of this kind of beam of light. Yep, does a pretty good job. And then there's also this, say I wanted to get rid of that. Simple brush. It takes a little bit more time, but it integrates well. You can see that the pattern, the flow of the grass from left to right is maintained. And if I zoom in, it should be pretty sharp. I mean, this image gets pixelated as I zoom in, but you'll see that it kept the same texture. It's not like all of a sudden like mushy in that area.
So I have a question based on a comment. Steve Goetz mentioned as far as the resolution in the chat, he says, I'm pretty sure it's still 1024 by 1024. And then Hannah says resolution is 4K for now.
Right. I think Hannah might be more correct. I think they've made the quality better, because this is the latest model of Firefly that's integrated into Photoshop. So, started at model 1, I think it's like model 3 right now.
So in the first example that you showed, where you were actually taking the whole subject and replacing that with a fairy,
This one, yeah.
Yeah, would that, I mean, that's a serious resolution. That's a big change. Would that be resolution prohibitive for, unless you want to go any bigger than like a 5x7 print, or how does that kind of balance itself out?
Well, so as Hannah said, she believes it's 4K. I do think that the quality is better, but as I said, if you're doing something that's for print and you had replaced an image using the generative AI, I would obviously do a test print first just to see if it looks like it integrates. If it still looks like it's a bit softer on the edge, then that might be something that you cannot use. So my attitude is, when it's little areas, I tend to use a lot of the generative AI. So I use it to clean up and fix patterns and backgrounds and whatnot. If it's like a major subject, I might be more inclined to use like the clone stamp tool. So I might be more inclined to do typical retouching that I've been doing for years. So, it's a great, these are great tools, but you don't need to make them be your be all and end all. You can have them balanced with your traditional tools that you might have been using. So, but I'm still curious on this. I want to see if we can try to get a successful replacement of the subject. So I'm going to do just a simple selection, and then in the taskbar, I'm just going to type in standing bear. I want to see if a bear will be a little bit more realistic. That's not too bad, the second one. First one's kind of weird around the neck area. The head and the neck kind of seem strange. Second one, I like that the tongue's a little funny, but it's interesting. And here it has its own ball, and look, it's got 3 arms. So, I mean, for me, part of the whole thing is, there are areas where you, like I showed you taking out the houses or the horses. It can do, professional style kind of retouching, and you just have to zoom in or make a print to see if the quality is good enough for, a client. But it also is a lot of fun. Like it's a mysterious process here. So, you type in a simple prompt and you pretty much don't know what you're going to get. So yeah, I kind of like that. So, okay, so do, oh, and then let me see, adjustment brush. Let's see here. Maybe for this image. I also wanted to show that there's now a new tool also in Photoshop. I wanted to go over the adjustment brush. That's selection brush. And where is my adjustment brush? Right above? Yeah. Okay, so my adjustment brush, it's a new addition to Photoshop 2024. It's this little icon here. And then what happens is, once again, left or right bracket to change the size of the brush. And then I just kind of paint. And as I paint, it's already kind of taking an adjustment, but then I can change that later. So I'm just making a general selection on her dress. It's not going to be perfect because I got other things I want to show, but you get the general idea. Okay, so do that general selection. And then you'll see that it defaulted to brightness contrast. If I double click there, then you open up the panel and you can do that. And then I believe up here in the options bar, it says adjustment, brightness, contrast. So I could say hue saturation. And then with that, I don't know why it doesn't automatically change it. Let me see if I can get rid of that. Yeah, I don't know what defaults to that. I want to go to hue saturation. Okay, yeah, so now when I start a new one, I'm just doing a simple selection. This is absolutely brand new, so they need to work on it, but they need to have a better option for like a pop-up where it lets you choose what the adjustment's going to be, because it automatically defaulted to, say, brightness contrast, which I did not want to use. And then I quickly switched it over on the second version to hue saturation. You'll see in the properties panel, so that pops up. So, I could then colorize, check the colorize section, and then I could move the hue around. And of course, going to move up the saturation so you can see it. As I move that, goes from just a white dress to like a subtly light green or blue or purple. Maybe green might be nice. And then of course you have to move the saturation slider to the right to bring out that color a bit more. And then it just creates an adjustment layer. So it's just a way that you can paint an adjustment. And then you can have it turn it on, turn it off. You have the built-in layer mask. So with the built-in layer mask, I can just switch black as my foreground color, and then choosing a regular brush. Regular brush, and then I make the flow, make it higher, maybe 85, 84, 85. When it's set to black, I can then paint over where the green went over her hair, and it erases, utilizing the layer mask. So you can turn that off. So this is the type of thing that, once you brush it, you have that adjustment layer, the hue saturation adjustment layer. You can then save this as a layered Photoshop file, come back days or a week later, and you could say, you know what, I want to change the color. So you could then double click the icon for hue saturation adjustment layer, change the hue to any other color, and then change the saturation accordingly. And then of course you do have presets too, so you can choose a preset color. Any questions about that? A new adjustment brush? No? Quiet crowd here. Okay.
They're in awe.
Okay, cool.
Everybody's in awe.
Okay. Yeah, here's another image I like. So here's another image I like, and just, as an example for the generative fill, say we thought that the houses in the background were distracting, could just make a simple selection. You do want to make sure that you're grabbing the area that you want to bring imagery from. So you want the sky and you want the grass area. You don't want to be too close to just the houses. Then you just hit generative fill, hit generate, does a little preview up top, and it'll give you 3 variations. The second one's great. Like the first one, it left like a weird, almost looks like a tree it put or something. And then the second one, not only did it fix it, but it followed the form of that hill slope very nicely. Yeah. And in general, if you go through and you like one more than the other, but it does have a little bit of, stuff on it, you could either just make another selection and hit generative fill, or you can just retouch with like the clone stamp tool right over that area. But in this case, the second one is pretty nice. So, okay, so that's kind of more like the functional tools for, generative AI in Photoshop. And then I want to get into the fun of generative AI. So,
Can I do something, Andrew?
yes.
Hannah. Oh, okay. I just tested again the adjustments. If you select ahead of time something, it will default to what you selected in terms of adjustment. So before even you click on an adjustment and then go to the brush for now, and that works.
Oh, okay. So if I go to the adjustment brush, that's right. So if I go to the adjustment brush here in the tool, she's saying, just be aware that under adjustment in the options bar, that's where you should choose your option first. That's a good point. So if brightness contrast was the one I used previously, that's what it will default to. But if I want hue saturation, choose that first before you
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So then when I paint on it, there it is, pops up in properties, hue, saturation. I can then hit colorize, and then I can change the color of it. Not the best selection, but you get the,
it's okay. Then you can go to the layer mask and
Yeah.
do whatever you want.
but the thing but the thing we love about these tools, right, Hannah, is that they're forgiving. So I mean, the minute you
Yeah.
you make that mistake, you can just delete it and then start again, choose the adjustment first. But
Yeah,
good point.
absolutely.
Good point. Yeah. Okay. So then, like I said, get into the fun parts of, generating an image. So I wanted to show you where all this started. So you can now see my browser. You can see where it says Get Creative with Adobe Firefly, correct? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
you see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, so this is you can get this by going to firefly.adobe.com. Normally I would zoom in, but the irony is when you are using Zoom, you can't use the zoom in keyboard shortcuts. You can't zoom while you're in Zoom. Okay, but
good to know.
firefly.adobe.com. And then it starts off like this. And then one thing that I really like is if you go to gallery, you can see a gallery of the different artwork that has been created. So all different kinds of styles. And then if you go over here, you'll see this is I believe, a video tutorial by Anna McNaught about generative fill. So you can just click on that or hit the watch button at the bottom right. And then, there's other ones. This is my friend Chris, so you can watch it here. And then the good thing is, if you go over to any image that you like, so you see first when you hover, it says a 3D representation while on the surface with a view of an alien planet, etc. You can also, if you click view, it'll take you right to that prompt inside Adobe Firefly where you can tweak the prompt and make it your own. So you can start off with like the prompt that someone else has used if you want that kind of style. And then I'll be showing you how you can submit your work to the Firefly gallery, so then you can be showcased here as well. And you'll see there's quite a variety. And I like this kind of 3D paper mache style, dragon images. And I've submitted a few images, so I might even have some of my images here. I don't know, but it's quite the variety.
What is the point of all these images? I mean, because some of them are just like a stock image of people sitting at a desk and a portrait, and then I can see the inspiration of the creative stuff, but
Sure.
what's
So,
that there for?
okay, so to clarify, when you create in Adobe Firefly, which is the same processing engine that we will be using in Photoshop to generate an image, you have the options of choosing art and you have the options of choosing photo. So if you choose photo, what will happen is Adobe is trying to be more responsible, I guess you could say, than other AI generating sites. So with other AI generating sites like Midjourney and Leonardo, you could go in and you could type in whatever the subject is, but you could also type in like Shepard Fairey or other different names of artists, and it would use their style or emanate an image of them without basically caring about copyright issues. Adobe wants to be more responsible about that. So whenever you start doing photo related images, it references Adobe stock, which are all Adobe stock images. It's not going out onto the internet. It's not stealing other people's imagery. So photo related or photo focused imagery is connected to the Adobe stock, and the art is just generated from your prompt, and it's not violating any copyright infringements. So yeah, so I mean, there's different intentions. So some people want to create something creative, and sometimes you just want to use it as a nice way to kind of, instead of going directly to Adobe stock, it's a way you can also create it here. So like someone say charming golden dog, pretty descriptive, where you could have basically just said like a golden retriever with a tennis ball and a food dish or something. But one way or another, it gets you to that image, you know. So yeah, so there's all that. And then if favorites, for some reason, my favorites hasn't been working. So I favorited a few things and it's not showing them, but this is typically where when you favorite something you've done, it would show here. So if I go back to home, I'm just going to grab one of my prompts. So in the beginning, when this started becoming a bigger thing, I used to create my own prompts. I would just think, what's the most descriptive way to get what I want? And then in time, I learned that you might as well just let AI help you create AI. And so I started going to sites like u.com, and I'm a big fan of perplexity.ai, I think it is. Or you could just do a search for Perplexity AI, and then it'll take you to the right URL. And then what happens is you can say, give me a series of text prompts to create AI art. And you'll be surprised at how descriptive it can be. So it's a really good way of, if you feel like you just can't verbalize what you really want, or you know, you feel like you've run out of ideas, it's a great way to expand kind of your vocabulary in terms of creating this. So that's what I tend to do. Now, in this view, when you're in the main kind of homepage, it's showing you what some of these prompts are for the images that are cycling through in the background. So make sure that you select them, delete them, and then paste in your own prompt. So mine is a close-up portrait, blue-green, translucent female. I kind of like more fantasy or surreal imagery. And then once you put the prompt in, you just hit generate. And then it takes you into this whole other kind of room. And then first thing you'll notice is it's kind of shimmering in the middle. That's its way of showing you that it's working on the image. And then it's created 4 variations. Now, all of the magic settings are on the left. So the first is, you'll notice that you have the option of Firefly Image 3 or Firefly Image 2. So Firefly Image 3 is a bit more realistic, more detailed. So it's defaulting to that. That's the newer one. And then you have a whole bunch of aspect ratio options. This one's defaulting to square, but if you click, you can do landscape. So if you ever want to create a banner, so a banner for a page, a group, or a YouTube video, you could choose widescreen. So in this case, I'm fine with square, but widescreen does come in handy a lot of the time, 16:9. And then you can choose content type. So if it's set to auto, it'll kind of make the choice for you. In this case, I think it might be more creative if I switch to art. So I choose art, and it doesn't auto generate. So it's waiting for you to choose more options. I'm going to show you this in Photoshop. The reference, so you can reference an image for your composition. So as an example, if you had a text prompt that says, you know, side portrait of someone with a beach behind or something, if you had a similar image to that and showing the direction that you want, you could upload that image for your reference image, and it would make your image more in line with that perspective. And then you can choose the intensity of the visual intensity of the style. And then as you go down, you'll see that you can also upload an image for your style. So as an example, they're showing you some here. There's like a neon one with purple and magenta and kind of purple neon, kind of a sketch, like a charcoal sketch. So these are type of style references you can upload or use the preset ones here. And then there's a whole slew of wonderful effects. So, you know, digital art, painting, you got all different. So if I go to all, you can see there's Art Deco, Baroque, Cubism, all different kinds, all different styles. And then obviously, if you click on something like pointillism, you will get a black and white conversion. So, you know, the preview is pretty much showing you what you'll get. So film noir, you would get more subdued colors. But it's a great way to be able to choose a style very quickly without having to overthink what the prompt might need to be. And then beyond that, as you go through, there's lots of options, techniques, themes, effects, materials. So you can even do like layered paper, which I'm a fan of. And then beyond that, you also have a lot of options for color and tone. So you can convert to black and white, cool tone, golden, monochromatic, warm tone, and then lighting. You have backlit, golden hour, harsh light, low lighting, quite nice. And then they even have a whole section for camera angle. So when you click on that, you have close up, knolling, landscape, shot from above, shot from below. Pretty great range of options from the get-go. But in this case, I just wanted to show with this prompt, choosing art as the focus. When I hit generate, it'll create another sequence of 4. Any questions about Firefly so far? And then I'm going to jump over to Photoshop and show you the similarities of using it in Photoshop.
There are a couple of questions that actually I think are more related to Photoshop than to Firefly exactly. And then there's a comment about the stock photo, the photos in the comments. Steve Goetz mentioned those images that look like stock photos are good for exactly that. Create your own rather than buying from a photographer, which has both good and bad consequences, which is a very good point.
Yep.
And Patrick Quinlan says, if I do not like any of the 3 generated items, how can I request more versions created?
Right.
And after seeing multiple sets of 3 versions, and I then decide I want to use a version from an earlier set of 3 or something like that.
Okay, good questions. Okay, so the first thing is you have your prompt here. Then, like I said, you can choose all the different kind of options on the left, and it'll then show it here at the bottom. So in this case, it just shows art. But if I were to choose, I don't know, let's see. Maybe vector look. You'll see vector look is there now. But if you want more than these 4 variations, you would hit the generate button on the right, and it automatically creates another sequence of 4. Now, the other question, which is a great question, you'll notice the minute that I hover over any image. So if I hover over this image, first you'll see I have a download option top right. If I liked all of these, you'll notice there's a download all option button in the top right here in the overall Firefly kind of layout. But if I hover over any image, there's download top right. Now, bottom right is the save to favorites, and you can click on that so you star it. And then if you click on the upload icon, the minute you click on that, you have copy link to image, copy image, save to library, submit to gallery. So that's, if you like an image you've created, you can submit it to that gallery. It doesn't automatically mean it will be accepted, but the more that you submit to the gallery, the better chances you have to have your work showcased. And then it is integrated with Adobe Express, which is the similar application to, say, Canva, where it uses template-based designs. So it's an easy way to streamline, bring this into Express and add text or animation elements. And then if I go to the top left under Edit, that's where you can also add generative fill or generate similar. So it'll do another sequence based on the features of this image. It can also use it as a composition reference or a style reference. And then once again, they're trying to integrate it with Adobe Express. That's the Adobe Express icon. And then you can add text, shapes, or create a social post. You can also rate or report your image. So I guess report might be just, complaining that the quality is not good, or it could be that something offensive popped up. Kind of funny, the idea of reporting your own image. But the one thing I would say, and that's why this is such a great question, so thank you for that, is I would get in the habit of not only favoriting image you like, but always, always, always download any images that you like, that you've worked on. Because as I showed you previously, before I jumped into this space, I had favorited a bunch of things and it didn't show up in my favorites gallery. So always download images you like, because if you favorite it and it doesn't save, it doesn't show up in that favorite section, then you're out of luck. Okay. But in this case, I added vector look. It's set to art. And I'm just going to hit the generate button, bottom right, and it's going to create a new sequence of 4.
So in addition to that question, he also asked, how can you use one of the choices to generate more like that?
Right. So say I like this one, right? As I showed you previously, if I go up to the edit button, there is that second option down, generate similar. So let me, might as well, as I said, practice what I preach. I'm going to download it. So top right, hit download. And then once again, they're saying you can also bring it into Express to create a social post, etc. So I downloaded that just to preserve it. And then I go to edit and I say generate similar. And that takes me back to that view of 4, and you see it kind of shimmering. That means it's building a new image. So it's going to create a new sequence based on that top left image. If I hit close, then you can see the 4. So now they're much more similar with the textures, the direct pose, etc., based on this top left one. Any other questions about that?
Not if anybody has some and wants to unmute themselves, but so far nothing else in the chat.
Okay. So, the focus of today was, generative AI in Photoshop. So I just wanted to show you, this is Firefly. This is basically where, in terms of creating these images, this is where it all started. So this is the main place. Once again, you can get that at firefly.adobe.com. And if you are on let me go to my thing. So if you are an Adobe Creative Cloud subscriber, you will then notice that it'll be listed, Firefly and Generative AI. Basically there's different variations for whatever plan you have. So you would then go to your profile, top right, and it would tell you what your monthly generative credits are. I have a lot because I'm also on like pre-release, meetings, but you'll get, depending on what Creative Cloud plan you're on, you will get a certain amount of monthly generative credits. And basically it tells you when you're running low on credits, you can continue generating content at no additional cost for limited time. So I think what happens is it slows down how quickly you can generate when you've wiped out all your credits, but you still have credits. So, okay, so I'm just close that. Okay, so that was, kind of a review of Firefly. And so now I'm jumping over to Photoshop. So now you see Photoshop again, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So with this one, and I don't really need all these images, but maybe I'll just save that one. It's weird. So what I would do is, if you've worked on an image like this previously, and you have this, if you go to your properties panel, you see you have a sequence of 3. Just remember, the original image was a JPEG. Just remember to save it as a Photoshop layered file. So if you save it as a Photoshop layered file, you can go back, then go to your properties panel and choose any variation and then save them out as their own images. So just make sure to remember to do that. Like, you don't want to save it as a JPEG and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I really like the second one more, But so I've already saved that, so I'm just going to close that. So some of these are just, I don't really need to go over these anymore. Let me just close these. Okay, so here in Photoshop, this is where the fun happens. So it all starts with just doing like a, Command N or
I have a
file.
question. Michelle is asking, do you need credits to generate images in Photoshop?
I believe you do. The only thing is it's not clear how it's used. In fact, we'll kind of test that out. So first, I'm just going to go File, so File New or Command N. And then in this case, it's defaulted to my recent sizes I've worked on. So 1080 by 1080, or I tend to focus on 2048 by 2048 for my art images. And of course, you can change the resolution here. You can do anything on you want on the right, including give it a title. Let's see. Grab a new prompt. Oops. Live video events. Okay, so I grabbed a prompt and just gonna say dreaming man, whatever. And then when I hit create, it's either what you choose for black or white background. There's nothing there. But if I, so once again, let me just kind of reference this. If I go to my Creative Cloud plan and I click on here, I see that I have 2,515 credits, right? So let's see if it changes when I create this image. So here I am. I'm in this image, and I can even hit F so I don't have to see the other images. And you'll notice in the contextual taskbar underneath, it says import image or generate image. So right from the get-go, it's telling you I can generate an image once I have a new kind of blank canvas, new blank document. Just to let you know, beyond generate image here, if you go up to edit, you can go down and choose generate image there. And you'll notice on my kind of listing here, I have Command G related to generate image. And that is, I went to my keyboard shortcuts and I gave generate image its own keyboard shortcut of Command G. In case of this, Command G was already selected for grouping of layers. So you can override any keyboard shortcut grouping. But I don't group layers like that too often. I tend to just select them and then option click with the folder icon at the bottom of the layers panel, and it puts it in. So I don't really need that keyboard shortcut. Okay, so here we are. So if I say generate image, all of a sudden,
There is a question
is there a
here.
question?
Patrick Quinlan says, please repeat how to select the blank and then request blank as mentioned about 2 minutes ago. Oh, wait.
A blank. You mean
Patrick,
the new document?
No, maybe he meant credits, to look at the credits. No, Patrick?
Okay, well, just for the sake, I'll do that. So once you have Adobe Creative Cloud installed, you'll see that there's the Creative Cloud icon. And as I hover, it says Creative Cloud. So when you click on that, typically it just shows all your different apps. And then what I tend to do, just to let you know, is I always tend to click on updates and check for updates. It's something that's an important thing that I tend to do almost daily. And you'll also notice that on my list of a lot of apps that are installed, mostly Photoshop, Bridge, Lightroom, some InDesign, I also have a beta app. So you'll notice over here under categories, if you click photo, there's the photo focused apps. Firefly and Generative AI, you can go directly to it. So you can say try now. Graphic design, you'll get Illustrator and InDesign options, and then also Adobe Fonts, stock, color. You can launch right here from the Adobe Creative Cloud app, video, etc. But if you go down to beta apps, you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of beta apps that are, test features and fixes under development in the beta builds. So in this case, I'm part of like a Photoshop pre-release group, and do like to see what they're developing with the Photoshop beta, which comes out before the regular Photoshop 2024. So that's why mine says open, because I've already installed it. But you would just go to beta, look for Photoshop beta, and then you would hit the install button. Okay, but top right under your profile, that's where it tells you your monthly credits. So mine is 2,515. You can also buy more credits when you're out. But with the balance of other things I do, I don't tend to go through all my credits in 1 month. Okay. And then just one thing I've learned, just to let you know about the Adobe Creative Cloud app or panel. When you are here, you don't want to quit. If you do a Command Q, it'll ask if you want to quit the entire Creative Cloud app. I never do that. You just hit the red dot, because if you quit it, I'm not sure it accesses all the features or won't let you know about updates. So I just click the red dot. Okay, so here I'm back in. All I did was Command N, and then just to let you know, it goes to your recent items. So these are recent sizes that you might have worked on. You can also go to a save section if you save them. Also photo, and it even has templates that you can open up, which is nice. That's like a new addition. And then you can go to print. So you get your typical 8.5 by 11, 11 by 17s, art and illustration. And then once again, there's a whole bunch of templates now. And there's even web preset sizes. In my case, recent is usually just good enough for me. And then I default to 2048. And then I give it a title. I can change the resolution right here if I want to. And then just hit create. In this case, I'm going to hit close because I've already created this. And then I bring this back up. So with the taskbar, I can just hit generate image. And then similar to Firefly, this panel now pops up. So this is pretty new in Photoshop 2024. It used to be more accessible in Photoshop beta, but it's now here in the regular Photoshop 24. So under generate image up top, I can paste in just simple prompt, but surreal and dreamy collage, thinking man. I like art more than photo. And then I'm going to show this in the second iteration of this, how I can use a reference image. But you'll notice in Photoshop compared to Firefly, you can upload a reference image, but you can't upload a style image, like a style reference. So it's reference image is more for like composition. If I go to effects, then this area comes up and it has pretty much the same selection, maybe more limited though. I think it's a more limited selection than Firefly. And you obviously do not get, you don't get the lighting and the composition options that you do with Firefly. Maybe that'll change in the future, hopefully. But I guess for the sake of the fact that Photoshop has so many other features going on, maybe they didn't want to get it too bloated. So, but pretty cool, right? In the heart of Photoshop, I can generate an image. So surreal and dreamy collage, thinking man, set to art. And I just hit the generate button and you see the preview up top, and then the properties panel pops up with 3 variations it'll create. Any questions while I'm here? That's pretty cool. And then I just click through. These are pretty wild, kind of like that. So you get that. Okay. And then you'll notice down here in the taskbar, there it is, surreal and dreamy collage, thinking man. So then I could add to it if I wanted to. And then just so you know, if you don't like the location of this bar, you can hide the bar, which you would then get anytime any panel is missing, you always just go up to the window. So that's where you can get the contextual taskbar if it's missing. But you can hide it. You can also pin it. So like if it tends to be too close to your image, you can say, okay, I really want it down here. I click it and I just say pin bar. And it's, in my case, it's already pinned. Okay. And then you can hit generate again. Any questions before I show the next element related to this? We're good? I think you're muted, Amy. Okay.
Patrick added a little bit to his question about selecting. He said something about objects. Please repeat how to select objects and then request as mentioned about 2 minutes ago. So he said objects. Does that answer? Does that make any sense to you at this point?
You select an object to do a generative fill to get rid of it?
It was how to select and then request as select and request the, I guess, the generative fills. Yes.
Sure. Okay. So here's a pretty basic example I can use. So see these 3 dots up top? Say I didn't want this blue dot. So I already have this generation. All I do is I choose the lasso tool. You always want to kind of have a loose selection that chooses the background. You don't want it too tight to the object, subject. and then it does that. So then I just hit generative fill. Now, when you click where it says generative fill, you can either replace it with something, or if you just hit generate on the right, that's where we'll read the background and just fill it for you. And you'll see over in the layers panel, it now says generative fill and has a built-in layer mask. And then you get 3 variations of the same thing. Absolute yellow. But it's giving you variations, which is always nice. But it does a nice clean job. If you were to zoom in, I don't think you would see edges to it much. Yep, it's pretty seamless. So that's generative fill. And then, let's see. So I wanted to show, if I do Command N, as if I'm going to create a new image. I'm just going to say Surreal Man, and then 2048 by 2048, brand new. Once again, you can import image, generate an image, and also under edit, you can also generate an image. But the taskbar is pretty helpful, so I tend to use right there. Now, if I say generate image, and I'm going to put in the exact prompt, surreal and dreamy collage, sticky man, choose art again, but this time, just to show you, I tend to like to use various apps for this type of digital art. So I'll use like Leonardo or Microsoft's image creator to create an image. And then I tend to will use that image as the reference image for something similar in Photoshop or Adobe Firefly. So in this case, I go to reference image, top right, choose image. I have my own kind of today folder. So I've created another image that's the same kind of focus, collage, surreal, dream, and then you can see a preview of it. That's my reference image. So now when I hit generate, I would imagine what tends to happen, which I enjoy about it, is it tends to give a bit more depth to my images. Yeah, see, so I kind of find this to be a bit more successful. And then, so I have no problem with that. I don't mind using other apps in relationship to Photoshop. So the original reference image was made in Leonardo. And then I can click through and I get these 3 variations.
And now at this point, if you wanted more variations, you'd just hit generate again, and then you'd have 6 to choose from, correct?
Perfect, yeah. Now the good thing about that is if I go to properties panel, I see 3. And now if I hit generate again, it's generating. So if I then go back to properties, you now see there is 6. So as long as you save this as a Photoshop layered file, you will have access to your 6 different images. So don't like flatten this or save this as a JPEG, or you're just going to have the one image. But yeah, so I can cycle through.
And the one thing that I've recently learned with playing around with this is that if I know that I hate 3 of those images, I can trash whichever images that I know I don't like,
You
and then
just
tell it to generate more.
you just took the words out of my mouth.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, if you hover over in the properties panel, you'll notice that there is a trash icon in the bottom right, and then also there's 3 dots. So you can also choose to remove the background of that specific option, and then you can also rate the quality of your image. So you can do those options, remove background or rate your image, or you can delete it altogether with the little trash icon. But it's pretty nice, you know.
Yeah, I
So
also, what I do, I don't know if you want to hear that, but I
sure,
also duplicate the layer, dupe, and then on the dupe, I put the other version. So I have a whole set of layers back and forth. I can do layer comps with it.
sure.
So it's really cool.
Yeah, and what I tend to do is, so when I click here, you'll see this colored thing is my actions panel. And so the top one is duplicate. And so I tend to like, if I choose one that I like, I can duplicate from it flatten it and then save it as a JPEG. That's kind of a quick way. And then kind of to show the way that I'll work, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that now, and then I'm going to show you how I use Topaz and then a bit of Camera Raw. So beyond, the generative AI, that's pretty much that part of today. I'll then show you what I tend to do with these images. So what I'll do is I'll duplicate like this, Surreal Man. And I wish they would change the name of this. I always find this confusing, especially for when I'm tutoring clients. Instead of duplicate merge layers only, I don't know why they don't just say flattened copy or flattened duplicate. It just sounds weird. Okay, so say okay, and then you'll notice in the layers panel, it just says background, so it's flattened. And then if I go to my image size, under pixels, you'll see that it's 2048 by 2048. Okay, for this, just for the sake of this presentation, let me show you what I tend to do. So say the image was, I don't know, 1800 originally. What I did is I'm a fan of Topaz Photo AI, which I believe it's also very good for photos as well as digital art. But I have it as one of my actions. So when I click on Topaz Photo AI, it makes its own TPAI layer, tells you that it's processing it in Topaz, and then it pops up its own panel. So you have a before and after, and then underneath you have some basic options, and then you can just click on the add enhancements. And I've set up a preset that it takes any image I'm working on and upscales it to 2048 by 2048. So if I just click that, automatically it starts enhancing it, and it will make it larger, but it'll bring out the nice detail. So you'll notice, I'm not sure how well you can see through zoom, but on the left around the neck area, it's a little mushy in the lines, but on the right, it's very clear and very defined. It's very nice. So I'm a big fan of Topaz. I love how it brings out the detail when it upscales. And then if you wanted to, say, sharpen it even more, you could just click on Add Enhancements, and that's where you can choose Sharpen. You can denoise, adjust the lighting, balance color. I'm still not sure how much I trust Topaz over, say, Photoshop in terms of adjusting lighting or color, but it does have those options built in. And then if you had something with text, it will preserve text. So as it says here, improves text and retains them from getting distorted by other filters. And then you can also use generative AI to make objects disappear or remove backgrounds. So sharpen is usually the only other one that I tend to use, but part of upscale is a sharpen slider, so I'm pretty happy with that. So once I've done that upscale 2048, at the bottom right, I'll export to Adobe Photoshop. And then if I turn on, turn off, let me zoom in, maybe you can see it better. So this is off, and if you look at the neck area, it's kind of pixelated, mushy, and then the minute I turn on the new Topaz, you'll see this very nice line work in the neck, also in this kind of weird kind of bushes that it created as part of his hair or back of his hair. There's now detail there. So there's detail and texture that's been brought out nicely. Same with the beard and mustache area, it kind of brings that out. So that's the first step of what I'll do. Any questions before I go on to Camera Raw?
So you were just showing that, but I think that sometimes when you do the before and the after, zoom kind of makes it a little slow, because I couldn't really tell when you were going.
Yeah, zoom's not the best for.
Okay,
so here's before. So if you look at the neck area, yeah, if you can't really picture it that well, just I guess you have to use your imagination with zoom, but
right.
It's just kind of mushy. It looks as if someone took a blur tool and kind of went over it. And then once you upscale with Topaz, so I turn that layer on, it's now very nice lines, very sharp. And then there's texture in the bush and the hair, texture in the floating balloons, and texture in the beard and mustache. So it just brings out nice kind of sharpened texture. And that's always one thing I like to do with my, digital art images. Firefly, Leonardo, Microsoft Image Creator, all of them tend to not upscale the best, and they will, the images will kind of be slightly mushy, I think. So, okay, so once I do that, I will then go from here, and I might save this just so I have it. So Surreal Man. Looks like I might already saved it, so I'm just going to put a little hyphen at the end. What I tend to do is I go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And if I knew, let me jump back out. If I knew that I was going to be coming back and forth with this, if I know I'm, just really focused and just what I do today is good enough, I'll go direct. Otherwise, I will right click and I will convert it to a smart object. So it will be a smart filter. So I can go back and forth without, ruining any quality to it. But I'm fine with today. So I'm just going to go Filter, Camera Raw Filter, brings its own panel up. I'm in the latest Camera Raw 16.5. I tend to zoom out just a little bit. And then on the right side, there, you have all these options. So first is color. I might decide, do I want to make it cooler or warmer? And then with the kind of blue ocean in his mind, I might move the temperature slider a little bit to the left. And then I've noticed with vibrance will bring out the blues nicely. So, I mean, obviously if you go negative, it'll mute everything, kind of desaturate, but it tends to really do well with the blues. And then saturation will bump the yellows. I've noticed a lot. Of course, it'll do everything. Like if you go here, it's neon, but a little bit of a bump of saturation brings out the yellows a bit more, the yellows and greens. And then if I go down to light, that's where I can do the overall exposure. So I might give it a little punch of that. And I always tend to bring up the contrasts, 18. And then if I think that some of the highlights are blown out, I will go negative, like maybe 14. And then depending on the shadows, do I like the shadows or do I want to open them up? I might open up the shadows and the blacks, maybe just a little bit. And I bump the whites to the right for kind of contrast. So at this point, I'll go down to this icon. It's the toggle to default settings, which you can also, it's showing you that you can use the / key, but it's so simple. I just click on it. So here's before, it's a bit muted, not that vibrant. And then now when I click, it's got contrasts, tonal range, vibrance to it. Pretty good. And then what I tend to do is I'll go to effects. And then with the texture slider, I will move that to the right to bring out texture in the detailed areas. And if it felt like there's some kind of blurry areas, I might use the dehaze slider. And then I might go to detail where I do a little sharpening. Now, here's one thing I've always liked. I'm not sure if people know this already, but if you move the sharpen slider, say up to, say, 40 or 50, you have your radiance detail. Under masking, if you hold down the Option key on a Mac, Alt on a PC, when you click on that tab, anything that is white is being sharpened. So while you're holding the Option key on a Mac and you move that slider, whatever is white and is detailed is being sharpened, and whatever is black and is considered smoother is being protected. So as I hold the Option key and move the masking slider to the right, you get this nice little preview that shows you where the sharpening is being isolated to. So I'm a fan of that. Sometimes I really like the images, and I wish there was a way that if I'm got my left hand on the Option key, my right hand on the masking slider, how do I take a screenshot of of this image? This isn't the best version of it, but sometimes the black and white previews are pretty cool. They remind me of etching, and I was a printmaking major in college, so I really like that look sometimes. And then I just let go, and then it just kind of isolates the sharpening. And then when I hit OK, brings me back into Photoshop, and I can just see that it has even more of a contrast, sharpening, etc. Any questions?
Yes. Richard Lewis is asking, What's the workflow if you want to try to replace the person in this shot with one of your client?
With one of your clients,
Yeah,
like one of your clients' profiles, you mean?
like if you wanted
Yeah,
to,
a photo that you would have of your client, and you use the AI to generate a general idea of what you want to do, but now you like everything, but you want to replace the person in the photo.
Sure.
The
So,
style, adding that style to the photograph of the person.
right. Um, so in this case, I'm focusing more on like the digital art of it, but in general, what I would tend to do is if I was going to say replace him, but keep the stylized elements of the mountain and the water and the balloons and all that, um, I would tend to obviously have a side profile photo of the client. I would go in and do like tonal correction, and I would work on, say, hue saturation to get similar coloring, maybe a colorization to it, maybe even open that image up and then do a color match. So the coloring is similar to this image as well. And then I would just have to, in this case, not use the regular lasso tool, but the polygonal lasso tool. And I'm not going to do it all the way through, but I'll just show you the beginning. I would start selecting, the area. Well, I might tend to bring over the profile, but I might already have a selection like this. So I'm just going to do a very quick one. But say I had a tight selection of this subject, and I'm doing a bad job, just quick, just a general selection. So I had a selection of this, and then what you can do is you can go up to select. I think you can also right click. Let me see if I can right click. Yep, right click, and I can say save selection. And then I could just say like man or something. And then what I could do is I could bring in that new photo, place it over, resize it, and I might change the photo that I brought over to say multiply, which would then let me see the image underneath it. And I'd resize it down. And then I could go over to my channels. And then what I could do is I could right click when I've resized it down pretty well. And then once I make that selection, I can right click and I can also say select inverse. And so I could end up, well, I do select inverse, then I'd right click again and do a feather. So I might do like a 1 pixel feather, just a soft edge. And then when the background or the inverse is selected, and I'm still a fan. I know people kind of call it old school, but I'm a big fan of quick masks. So I might hit Q just to have a preview to see how good that selection is. I would delete the background after, always after making sure that that new layer that I brought over has a built-in layer mask. So I'd add a layer mask, then I would load this selection and I would fill it to knock out that background and just kind of fit it in.
I was just wondering if there wasn't a way using AI to use that image and have it then merge that if you'd photographed it properly, so that you'd set out for this idea, but you use the AI to get a general feeling before you did the photograph, then you do the photograph of the person and
Sure.
then use AI to combine it.
Right. So once again, if I open just a new blank image, right? When you generate an image, do remember that you put in whatever prompt you have, but if you choose reference image, that's where you can choose a reference image to kind of get the composition and the style of what you want. So you could have like a photo. How do I say this? You could have a photo of your client as the reference image, and then hopefully the properties, I'm having a hard time describing it, but the way that the look of the art that's generated might be more realistic to your client. And then maybe you could use elements of that mixed in with placing a new photo that you tweaked to kind of combine the two. But in general, I tend to not shy away from using both the so-called old school techniques and the new school techniques. So I would tend to like tweak my image and then place it over, add a layer mask, and then blend it, and play with that way. Um, I love using AI as a tool, but I don't want to get so entrenched in it that I think of it as replacing some of the things. I mean, I can use a lot of these generative fill things, but I still might want to, as an example, choose my clone tool and just say, you know what, option click, boom, take this out. I like the feel of using the old tools. I kind of never want to get rid of the old tools. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, complaints?
Well, Hannah made a couple of comments. You can use an image as reference, but not sure it will match.
Correct.
And they probably are working on it to make it better.
Absolutely. So that's what I said, that, when you go to a new document in Photoshop, and then you say, generate image, and you get this panel, it's very limited now. But this is new. This is brand new to Photoshop. So they're trying to give you options, but the reference image, once you click on it, says match the style from your own reference image, or you can choose it here. It might not take the composition. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Whereas when we went to Firefly, you absolutely can choose like the style reference as well as kind of like the composition reference. So for now, Firefly is more extensive than Photoshop for this, but it's pretty good. I mean, for Photoshop to be able to do this right in Photoshop, it's pretty nice. Any questions?
Hey, Andrew, how do you bring Firefly images into Photoshop?
Down.
All right, so here I am, Photoshop. Yeah, it would be nice if you could just go, here. I think if you go to the top right and I click on this, this will take you to Photoshop, but it's like Photoshop on the web. It's not going to like take me to my Photoshop. So this is just kind of showing you web apps. So far, the only way that I do it is, say I downloaded this image earlier. I would then just go to Photoshop, go to open, and then it might have gone to desktop. Yeah, so it goes to desktop. I just open it from desktop or into the specific folder. And then from there, that's where I might check the image size. In this case, it is 2048, so I don't need to resize it. But, in general, I love using Topaz, so I might even, see about, that's the hard thing about Firefly. I can't really specify. Like if I say square, I get 2048 by 2048. But in my case, it might be nice to make it smaller and then resize it in Topaz. But I can open any image that I've downloaded, and then I can do the same things where I can go to Camera Raw. And then here's one thing I wanted to remind people about Camera Raw. So after you use Camera Raw on that first image, if you go up to filter, you'll notice that there's Camera Raw filter up top, and then there's Camera Raw filter about 1, 2, 3, like 6 down. If you go to the 6th one down, you're going into Camera Raw Fresh, and you can choose the correct, say, white balance and tonal correction and color correction the way that you want to. If I choose the top one, it will just add the previous settings to this image, which might not be at all what I want, especially if it's a totally different like color theme as this one is. So just be aware of that. Like if you go to filter, don't just choose Camera Raw filter from top, or you're going to get the previous settings onto your new image. Okay.
I have one other question. So when you generated the 3 images and then you generated another 3 images, it goes back to the credits question. Does it charge you for each of those 6 images? How does the program know what images you use and what images you keep? Especially in Photoshop where you're generating it through your desktop app rather than on the web.
I get it. I get it. So what's happened here is this was the original one, and we created 6 images. And I believe that when I went to my Creative Cloud and I went to my profile, it said 2515 was my original credits left.
Yes.
I don't know, you know, the Firefly gods are looking kindly on me because I've just done all this different work and I've only lost so-called 4 credits. So you might have to keep an eye on that yourself, but for me, I've just done a whole sequence of stuff and I've only gone down 4 credits. So, but that's where you would check. But they are letting you know, they're trying to be friendly about it, that when you're running low on credits, you can continue to generate content at no additional costs for limited time. So it means that if you do kind of zoom through all your credits, you'll still be able to create. But I've heard that sometimes it slows down a little bit. And then obviously you can buy more credits here too. Does that help?
I would imagine that they're not charging you, like, if you generate 3 versions and then another 3 versions, they're probably only charging you
I agree.
for the ones that you use.
Right. Or they might be charging me 1 credit per sequence of 3, as opposed to 3 credits for a sequence of 3.
Mm.
Yeah. But it's nice, you know, so like I said, as long as you save this as, so there's 6 variations, so I'll call it Surreal Man 6. As long as you save it as a Photoshop file, you could come back, go to your properties panel, and you could cycle through the different options. Let me see.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then maybe just for sake of fun, I'll try one more image with the prompt. So 2048, and then open that up, go to generate image, and then this is a different prompt altogether. Double exposure. Once again, I like the surreal idea. But now I'm trying to add paper mache style and see if it'll take on that look. And I want to hit generate. It's always mysterious though. Like sometimes I get images that I'm very happy with, and other times it's like, it didn't really read what I wanted. Well, it took it. So now it looks like that kind of paper mache or cut paper look. That's pretty creative.
Mm.
That's fun. And so typically, you know, you could create in Photoshop or directly in Firefly, and then you could save it and then bring it into Adobe Express and add text and, you know, make this like a social post or cover for something. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And what I tend to do is I will generate an image. So as an example, I'll generate an image. Now, one thing I tend to do is I like to be what I call professionally paranoid. So I'm aware that like I have 3 variations here, right? But before I go and start, say, retouching or something, I will do just a simple Command J and make a copy of that. I'll turn off the original. I'm going to hit F so you can just see this image. And then what I'm going to do is go back to that remove tool. And then the first thing you'll notice is it's telling me, you know, it's got the little "you can't do that" icon. So it's saying that you'd have to create a whole new layer from it. Which is interesting too, because normally when you get this and you say okay, it creates a new layer from it. But I could obviously just right click and I could say rasterize that layer. So once I rasterize the layer, I'm in the remove tool. I hit the left bracket to make it a little bit smaller. One thing I've noticed is I like how it creates in Firefly or directly in Photoshop, but I think it always adds too many elements. So what I'll do is I'll create an image like this and I'll say, you know what? Some of this stuff is just, you know, too much. And you don't have to use the remove tool. Like you could end up going and you could say, let's see how well the spot healing brush does. And the spot healing brush does pretty good. Sometimes it brings a little bit of excess. But I'll just get rid of like elements I think just aren't needed, you know? So I like some of those icons, but I don't need every single one. And if the spot healing brush is stubborn, that's when I'll just say, okay, what about the remove tool? And then I'll just use the remove tool there and see how well it does. The only thing is remove tool, you know, is using like generative AI, so you get a little progress bar. And then just to show you another tool that's pretty helpful, if I have a whole area, I can say patch tool, and then if it's kind of going to be a tight squeeze there, but so say if I go here, top right, and I have this debris imagery, it makes a selection, and then when I hover the cursor, you'll see it's got the patch icon with an arrow. If I move that arrow to the right, it then will get rid of that whole area for me. So that's a great way to like do a whole bunch of things at once. I mean, you could also obviously select it with the lasso tool and then do generative fill. But, you know, I like to jump back using the different tools. But, you know, if I feel like there's just too many elements, I'll use this as a way to just kind of clean it up. Sometimes it gets a little weird. And then if it gets a little weird, I might just go back to spot healing brush and just clean up that one little area. But I'll clean it up so then your eye can focus. And it just seems much more. So here's the original with all that kind of visual debris. And then here it's kind of more focused, I think. Any questions, concerns, complaints? We good?
Let's see. Oh, two messages. Let's see. Steve Goat says, I just checked. Every time I click on generate in Photoshop, it subtracted 1 credit.
Even if you did a sequence of 3, right, Stephen? It must be, because it always does.
Yeah, I did. What I did is I did one generate. I just took a black background and generated a pirate flag. And then the next one, I asked for a rose bush, gave me a rose. And then I clicked on generate 2 more times.
Correct.
To get more options.
Yep. Right. So as an example,
when I went back, I found I had lost 4 credits.
Right. So as an example, I just did that new image, this image, and then when I go back to my Creative Cloud, I click, and yeah, it took 1 credit. So yeah, only 1 credit for 3 generations. Pretty generous. It's good. I don't think they want you to. Yep.
Hannah typed in, add a new empty layer to use it.
Oh, what I meant is when I do all this remove tool and everything, if you add an empty layer and say sample all layers, you get an empty layer with the changes, which you can control it a little bit better.
Mm.
Well, I didn't really want to. Yeah. See, I just create a new layer of it and just kind of clean it up.
No, what I meant is even if you clean it up, if you may have an empty layer,
Right.
that you don't really like it or you want to do the transparency, it doesn't do the whole image, it just does the corrections.
Sure. Yeah, I'm fine
Yeah.
either way. I just kind of wanted to do it right on the image. I tend to do it a lot with my images, so you know, you can make as many layers as you want. So but the thing is, you know, the main thing is you notice that when we're on the original layer, you see little sparkles here. That's the generative AI layer. You have access to the variations, but the minute you want to use certain tools, you can't. So you just Command J and then right click and then make it a rasterized layer if you want. So, yep. Any other questions?
I've noticed that when you go into the stock library at Adobe, it has a little icon now that the image was generated by AI. Is there any copyright problems with images that are generated by AI?
So recently, Adobe released their terms of service announcement, and a lot of people misunderstood what that meant. And there were people on YouTube that utilized it as a way to make sensational videos. Adobe's stealing our images and all this, sensationalism, just so they could get, views on their YouTube channel. And then what happened is they came out and they released very simple layman's terms of what those terms of service are. And they make it very, very clear that when it comes to this type of, generative AI image, they are not just scouring the web for, images that are typically copyrighted. Especially with stock imagery, it's images that have been submitted to Adobe Stock that they use for those images or have been generated related to the Adobe Stock imagery for the photo type of imageries. So they're protected that way. They're being much more responsible than many of the other generative AI companies like Midjourney, Leonardo, etc. But that is something that they were aware of, and there was some real misinformation circulating, and like I said, sensational videos on YouTube that they clarified. Now, there is like a subtext about that where I think there's a warning that pops up that says if you work on some images with generative AI, you do get permission to have it reviewed. And they're just trying to make sure that like people aren't working on like, illegal imagery or offensive imagery or something. So I don't know all the text to that, but I do know that there's a subtext to it related to legality, which any company will do. Any company will have the same type of principle.
I have one other question. When, let's say you generate 3 images and you decide to use one, do those other 2 images get stored by Adobe? Do they keep track of images that are generated in like their vast library or archives? Or once that image is generated in your program, they don't keep a backup copy of it, if that makes sense?
Good question. So the first thing is, here I am in Photoshop, right? So if I'm in Photoshop, it has the 3 variations. If I like this series, I always save it as a layered Photoshop file. And then, like I said, I can always duplicate it and, retouch it or just flatten it, save it as a JPEG or PNG file, whatever. There is no way to like favorite any kind of images while I'm in Photoshop. There's no options for that. But if I go back to Firefly, the one thing that I was saying that I'm a little concerned about is I'll generate an image of 4 like this, and there is the favorites, and it says save to favorites, right? So I'll say, okay, save to favorites, and then I'll go view favorites, and sure, it's saved these 2 today, but what about the 50 other ones I've saved somewhat recently? Where are they? So the one thing I can't stress enough is when you're working in Firefly, it's got a lot of creative options. It's a lot of fun. You can play with it and have some really good results, but be professionally paranoid about the fact that you want to save your work. So they made it even easier than ever before. You can download all, top right. So I would just get in the habit of downloading it. Nowadays, you can also buy an external hard drive and store like all your and they're not even that large. I mean, if I go to the today, so if I go to,
I guess my question is actually, let's say, especially in Firefly, if you generate images and you create a signature style and you create like an illustration or a series of illustrations, but those other 3 that you did not use, does Adobe offer those to somebody else who may type in the same type of prompt, which would result in a style that's very similar to yours?
Sure. So as you hover over any image, you get all these options. So like I said, for your sake, you can favorite it and you can download it just to have, right? But if you go to that upload button, if you say submit to gallery, that's when, if they accept it, and they don't always accept it. So say I submit 5 images, they might accept 1 image. if it's submitted to the gallery, the minute it's on the gallery, it does tell you. So like say I say submit to gallery. Here it says your Adobe profile photo and name are public. So first it's your name, then the minute I hit next, it says our team reviews all submissions before they are published. We may feature the best submissions with your profile photo and name. And then it tells you if added to the gallery, anyone can view the image. They can use and remix your prompt, your text prompt, reference files, and additional parameters. And they can also like the image. So if you submit it to their gallery, it's a way of showcasing your work, but it's also a way of saying you're letting other people use it or play with it, which I don't really have an issue with. A lot of times, there might even be a series that, I submit one image that I'm willing to let people play with, but another image from the same series I won't submit. And that's the one that I might, resize it, make it larger, and then, showcase it on my site or something.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that.
Yeah, great questions, though. Great questions.
So I'll jump in and say Patrick Quinlan has a comment. He says, I'm looking forward to viewing the video of this Zoom session. So many nooks and crannies to stop at and replay, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot of options with Firefly. So, I know that the focus was generative AI in Photoshop, but don't be shy about Firefly. I mean, and like I said, you can always download the image, and then that's when you bring it into Photoshop. You can get rid of, distracting elements, and then you can tonal correct, color correct, sharpen with Camera Raw. I always tend to like to tweak my images. I don't ever usually download an image and then just showcase it on Facebook. I tend to always do some retouching, maybe even color grading. So as an example, I think I downloaded this, right? So if I go to Photoshop, beyond the general beyond the general thing that I did, sometimes I might always create like a new layer, and then I'll go up to filter, Camera Raw, and then beyond the general corrections that I'll do. So let me just do some just to start off. A little bit of contrast, bring back the highlights. It's not the clearest image, but whatever. If you go down to color mixer, that's where you can also kind of tweak the colors. And then this is one of my favorite tools. Under saturation, you have all the different color sliders, but if you look on the top right to the right of HSL, you have this icon, the target adjustment tool. Once you click that, you move it over your image. You could say, okay, well, I think this yellow I'd like to make a bit more saturated. So when I click and I pull to the right, it saturates it a bit more, makes it more vibrant. If I pull to the left, it desaturates. And it's isolating, it's targeting and isolating as best it can, but it is integrated with other similar variations of that yellow and green. So if I go like this, you'll notice that other areas of similar yellow and green will be affected. But it's pretty targeted, pretty nice. And you'll also notice that down here, it also has this new taskbar that without even going over to the right, I can change it to hue or luminance, and then I can play with it that way. I think this is also a curve. Yeah, if I click here, I can go directly to the curves. And then color grading. So I'm a big fan of this. When I go to color grading, there is either, this view where you have your midtones, shadows, and highlights, or you can click on any particular focus. So I can say shadows. Okay, so the shadows, maybe I want them to be a bit more purple. So you have either sliders, or so I can move the hue slider towards purple, or I could just say, here's the color wheel. I'm going to go directly down to purple. So now it makes that blue a more kind of purplish. And if I go over here, it makes it more like a magenta. Then you have two options. You can either reduce saturation by moving the slider down, and you'll notice the little circle on the color wheel moves too. So they work in tandem. I could just say, you know what, I enjoy the color wheel more. I click on the circle and I can pull that. So if I go to the middle, it's like desaturated. And then the further I go to the edge, the more saturation is. So I can bump up the darks to have a nice saturated magenta purple. I can then click on my midtones, say, okay, midtones, that'll probably be these greens. Maybe I'll make them even more green. Okay, once I do that, I'm like, ooh, that's too much. But it's as simple as either moving the saturation slider down or moving that circle down towards the middle. If I go to the middle, it's like 0. And then if I go here, it's kind of in between, you know. And then highlights, maybe I want to add some yellow to the highlights. And then it's a little too much, so I can just pull it back. But that's one thing I really like about Camera Raw. So in general, I love Camera Raw for the fact that I can tweak the color. You know, do I want it to be more cool or warm? I can fix the light. I can add some texture sharpening. You know, I tend to like texture more than clarity. And then I can go down to, you can do curves, and then you can do the color mixer for saturating specific colors, and then you can do the color grading for creative effect, all in this one panel. And this also, if you're a Lightroom fan, this is the same processing engine that you get in Lightroom. So you'll have the same type of options. So if you're more comfortable in Lightroom, you'll be happy to know that they have the same type of options. And then if I hit OK, there it is. So before, after, just a bit more kind of color variation. Okay. Any questions?
Looks like there's one. Hannah says, open the preferences and turn on the content credential. Maybe she's answering somebody else's question.
Yeah, I answered Steven, said I can do it and send him a screenshot of the content credential.
Right. I think if you do a search too, you could probably do like Adobe content credentials, and then there's a whole site that goes over all that and gives you a lot of, you know, information.
Yeah, but what I meant was you can't once you've created an AI image from Firefly, you can't copyright it. It's not yet anyway. It may be that you've created it, but in the United States they haven't allowed for copywriting an AI image.
Right. Right. I've heard that too.
The question becomes, how much of it was AI and how much of it was you? Well, that depends. Did you start with AI and then do yours, or did you start, do yours and then add a little AI? It's complicated, but you
Sure.
can't.
And there's times when I will create, you know, similar images and then cut them out and make them into one composition, but there might be various AI elements that I used originally to then create the photo composite. So yeah, but that's a good point. I mean, I think they've even brought that up, like in terms of like people trying to sue Midjourney or Leonardo, and then the general outcome of that was the decision that you can't copyright it. So
There was a seminar that I was in on Zoom where they had a copyright attorney talking about this very issue and saying that if you have an image that is, you know, let's say 90% your image and there's 10% of it around it that's AI, the parts that are AI you cannot copyright. So if somebody uses those same images in their compositions, you have no recourse. But that the part that is yours completely, you still own. So the image, it's going to be very interesting. It's going to create a lot of options for lawsuits.
oh, I bet. It must get pretty confusing as to like how you can differentiate which percentage. So,
well, it came down to what items in it. So it isn't that you own 90% of it. It's just that there are some AI elements that are incorporated and you don't have exclusive use of those.
right.
So as an example, you create a great piece of art, or you have a great photograph, and then you use the AI to remove that stop sign, then that part of, everything was yours in your copyright, but then it's questionable because you've used the AI to remove the stop sign.
I imagine what they'll do eventually is say, well, if you could have done it with clone or a simple removal tool or something, if you didn't use anything fancy, maybe. But I don't know how they're going to.
Yeah, it would really come down, I think, to the stock part of the images, where if you had created an image with a person and there's a tree over their shoulder and you took it out, that shouldn't be much of a problem if it's cloning parts of your picture. But if you added a tree, that tree you don't own. So that tree, you can't have, you couldn't sue somebody for doing another image and having that tree in it and you going after them.
Right.
Mm.
And I'm not sure, like when you say you have a photo, and then I go in and I make a selection, and then I add an element. So say it's similar to that. Let's go here. So say it's this, and I go in and I create a simple selection, and I say once again hawk, I guess, and then I say generate. So it creates this, generative AI, abstract, weird, weird hawk. And then whatever, say it was good. And then I flatten this and then I save it. I'm not sure what the technology that Adobe uses can then like put stamp in my image what portion of AI was used, but I imagine that they do have that capability. So I'm just not clear as to how much that gets stamped. But I know for sure if I create something like this in Photoshop, that's pure, generative AI, then for sure that's completely stamped as an AI image. I'm just not sure how detailed they get.
Well, I think the legalese tends to be more about somebody coming after you for using something in your image, or that you are owning. In the case of that hawk, you don't own the hawk. So if somebody else uses that hawk, you don't have any recourse to them using that hawk because it was a stock piece. But the rest of your image is fine as far as, people can't sue you for that.
Sure. Any other questions?
I will make a comment along those lines. I noticed somebody mentioning on Facebook once or Instagram that they had used AI at some point in their process, but then chose not to use it. And then when they saved the image to and posted on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it was listed as had been used AI, and they were not happy about that because they didn't use the AI in the end.
Right. In fact, that's kind of you see more and more articles where I think someone was in a photo show, like a contest, and he was, disqualified for using AI, and it wasn't AI. So I mean, there's a lot of those issues, and out in the real world as well as online. I would imagine, I've run these groups. I've been running groups on Facebook for more than 14 years, and I have to admit, every single day has been frustrating. And it's only getting worse in the sense that I believe their bots go out and they make these false kind of decisions. And there was a period recently where they had flagged something of mine, and then literally every time I would go to Facebook, like say I jump out and do something, go back to Facebook, a warning would pop up and say that like, you got a mark against your profile or something. And it like there was a glitch or something. I got it literally like 50 times that day. This thing kept just popping up. And I'm like, what are they trying to get people to leave their platform? And then I found that other people had similar complaints. So you're going to have like this whole reality where they're going to false flag posts. They're going to false flag things for AI that's not AI. And as an example, I also run that Photoshop Enlightened group, and it was a big group, and then I believe their bots falsely flagged some what they call intellectual property violation, and so I moved it to another group, and it's already 50,000, which is great. But I've noticed a lot of people, just in general, on a side note, it's a weird mix between there are a lot of purists in the group who take photographs and just tweak it in Photoshop or Lightroom. That's it. That absolutely hate AI. And then there's people who use AI all the time with their images and are fine with it. And they're kind of in awe of the abilities that it does with the generative fill and generative expand. It does such a great job. And so you got these two worlds kind of clashing at times in these groups. It's amusing.
Have you had any experience with using AI replacing a background for green screen work? Because those edges in green screen can be so tricky. And if AI does a better job than some of the green screen software, I wonder if, you've had any luck with that.
I haven't really done that, but the one thing you'll notice though with this taskbar, which is quite nice, is if I open up any image like this, automatically it says select subject or remove background. So if I hit remove background, it's a little overzealous in this case, but sometimes it can see like the sky and get rid of that, and then you can add your own sky. But if I hit select subject, it tends to make, it's interesting, I've noticed that the select subject and the remove background are the same type of mask it makes. So if I say remove background, it overdid it. And so if I do a Command Z and I do select subject, it's the same type of selection. It's just selecting the top, like the roof of this house. But nowadays the tools for all that is extremely easy. And I think even in Firefly, it's been a while since I've used it, but if I go to edit, there's like generative fill. So if I go to generative fill, there is like remove. So if I go here, I can kind of like erase areas right in Firefly. I don't even have to take it into Photoshop. So this element or sub element of Firefly, I can insert like, fairies floating or fireflies themselves floating around, or I can remove elements right here. And then I would imagine Adobe is working on the idea that if I can remove the, like select background, and it doesn't, I'm not sure it's going to do it best job. Okay, so I did select background when remove was selected, and it did remove the background. It does not have the ability to add a new background right here as part of Firefly using generative fill, but I would imagine it will. So the technology is constantly updating. They're constantly revising it, constantly adding new features. So I would imagine, in the future, you're going to have that capability.
Yeah, it'd be nice if it would actually create those in layers. So you could have the face there separate from that Gaussian overlay over the front, and then have a separate background and be able to manipulate all those individually.
Right. So let me just see here. So here I'm in Photoshop. Tolerance is a little low. I'm just selecting this sky just as an example. So shift clicking with the magic wand. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect, whatever. So do that. So I should have inversed it. So if I right click and I just say select inverse, and then I click on the layer mask, it knocks it out. So obviously when you're in Photoshop, that's a layer, and that's a layer that's has a nice layer mask, and I can go back and clean it up or take away, but I think it did a pretty good job. And then I could add like my own, new sky or other elements. But when it comes to Firefly, yeah, they don't really have the layer capabilities now, and I'm not sure if they're so inclined to add them, because I know that if I went back to here, trying to figure out how to get back to just kind of this sequence. They don't really make it clear. So if I go back, then I'm like back to just the general thing. but whatever. So say I just generate something. There's the image. I know that you can, from here, yeah, once I click on it, I think that's where you can like remove elements or whatever. But I think what it is I think they think with all of these options that if you start adding layer options to this in Firefly, it's going to be just too much. But there was this one thing where I'm going to say try prompt, then it's going to generate. Then once it's generated, that's where I'll have the capability, I believe, where I can go to Photoshop on the web. So let me see, edit. No, generative fill. Okay. Yeah, they don't really have it integrated so much, but I think what's going to happen in the future is the same way that they're letting you access and open it in Adobe Express to add elements. You might be able to take this further by going to Photoshop on the web, and that might have, most likely will have layer capabilities. Hope that helps.
So we have another question that's back to Photoshop. Somebody came in at the last minute and they want to know, can you show us how to add the bird when you are adding the hawk?
Sure.
They missed that part, so they'd like to see that again.
Okay, so yeah, simple image, and maybe we'll choose a different bird. What's another one? Eagle, maybe? I don't know. But I just make a simple selection with the lasso tool. Then you have the contextual taskbar at the bottom. It says generative fill. When you click on it, if you had something you wanted to take away, you would select that area and then you would just hit generate. But if you want to add an element, you make a selection, and then where it says here, what would you like to generate? Then you type in, maybe eagle. And then you just hit generate. And then you see a little preview bar up top. And then the properties panel creates 3 variations. That one's kind of nice. Yeah, some are a bit more abstract than others. That one's kind of nice. Just be aware that like you see it and you're like, I like it, but it'd be nicer if it was over on the right. The minute you move it, you'll see that, it does have a built-in layer mask, but it takes the original background that it was integrated with. So if I try to find where it was, just do Command Z, it blends in nicely. But the minute you move it, it does that. And then, so the only option to that is you might have to choose like the magic wand tool, select that background. I just hit Q for quick mask to see how well it did. It's pretty good. I might right click and feather 0.8. And then I go to the built-in layer mask, and then doing Command Delete, I fill with black, Command D, and then it does a pretty good job. There's a little bit of fringe here, and then I can just choose a brush. And then as long as the brush is set to foreground black, I can clean that up. Make sure in the brush, I don't know why it's not defaulting. Okay, so that's the regular brush. And then I can, with black as a foreground. Oh, we went to adjustment brush. It's weird. It sometimes doesn't choose the regular brush. So make sure in the layer mask, and then you can just paint with black. And then if you really want to get crazy, you could zoom in and just clean up the little edges a bit.
What about just moving your selection to that point and have it regenerate? I wonder if it comes up
I've
with
done that too.
birds.
That's a good idea. So let me just go back, Command C.
The only problem with that is when you generate something again, you don't never know that you'll ever get the same one again.
That's what I was about to say, though, is you're not going to get the exact same. So here I am. I've created the selection. Okay, what if I want it over here? So then I just say generative fill, type in eagle, and then I hit generate. Maybe it'll be similar. Maybe it'll be very different. Don't know. That's weird. So it's almost like it remembers that I did a layer mask. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna delete those layers, choose the lasso tool, create a new selection, and type in eagle and hit generate. It's weird. It's like it remembered that. Okay, now it's clean, you know. Some are a bit more abstract. I think the first one's the most successful, but it's not the most detailed. You don't really see the face, but the gesture's nice. This one's a bit too abstract. That's kind of in between. Um, but yeah, it's that simple. Like, so, I mean, you know, if it's not working here, just do a new selection over here and then generate again, you know?
I think I think when you're asking it to generate again, it assumes that you don't like what you just did to a certain degree. So it's going to keep giving you different things.
Right. So if I felt like this one, you know, the face is kind of missing, I could say, okay, what's your next version of 3? So I just hit the generate button in the properties panel. See the preview bar up top. So this one does have a better face. Yeah. So I'm glad I did that. Thank you for that suggestion. So yeah, and then they do get a little abstract.
Yeah.
But as long as one of them, 1 out of 3 is fine, then I'm happy, you know. But yeah, I think that's the best one so far. So
Just want to make one comment for fun. I give a prompt to my students in a class.
mhm.
Same prompt, everybody gets something different, which is everybody, none of us get the same thing.
Wow, that's good to know.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty weird that like you gave that simple suggestion of, you know, replacing the astronaut girl with fairy, and it
Mhm.
was so abstract and weird. I was like,
And she
I
was
didn't
ugly.
expect that at all.
She was horrible.
Yeah.
I hate faces in AI. I hate them.
I mean, they've gotten better and you can
Yeah.
get some pretty good portraits. But yeah, sometimes when you do like the fill, generative fill, and then you try to replace it, sometimes they get really ghoulish, right? I mean,
Yeah, I like text to vector. That's my favorite.
that's
Oh,
Illustrator.
my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some
Mhm.
quite nice AI features in Illustrator now too, and I believe
Yeah.
now also even in Adobe InDesign and
Yeah.
Adobe Acrobat they have AI.
Acrobat has AI too, and InDesign.
It's an AI world now.
And then I'm looking for AI for in my kitchen that somebody's gonna cook for me.
That's right. All this
So
AI, why does it make our life easier instead of
buy the egg now.
cool?
So one to
Anybody
comment,
from this group? Anybody coming to Adobe Max in October?
I'll be there.
I'll be there online.
Oh, cool.
I can't afford to go in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, just online for me.
There's some pretty dedicated people though. There's some friends from Australia that are going. And I
Yeah.
think for the flight alone, it was like 3,500. I'm like, wow, you're pretty dedicated.
Mhm.
I'm sure it would be a lot of fun. I'd love to go, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different too, being in Miami as opposed to Los Angeles.
Yeah. I'm not excited about Miami, but
Yeah. We're going to be so entrenched in the conference center, we won't even really go out that much to Miami. And you have a session, right, Hannah?
I have 3 sessions. Yeah.
Nice.
But they're all the same.
What is
It's
the title?
Illustrator. You're not gonna come. It's Illustrator.
Well, I'm going to come to be supportive if I have time. Yeah. So cool. Any other questions or is that?
in the chat, Steve Goetz mentioned that he has a photo of lorikeets, which is a bird, that looks more like AI than the lorikeet I generated in Firefly.
Interesting.
And so we put the photo in the chat if anybody wants to look at it, to show that his photo it looks AI and it's not.
Interesting.
Oh. I see that.
Yeah, I took this photo, looked at it, and went, dang, that's pretty much straight out of camera. And so I generated one in Firefly and went, oh, yeah, that looks more real.
Which looks more real, the Firefly or your photo?
Well, my photo was a photo, but the AI version looked more like a photograph than these do. I mean,
Which one is the photo,
so
the left
close.
or the right?
Say again?
Which one is it, the left or the right?
Oh no, they're both real.
Oh, okay.
This is a
Cool.
total photograph. They were on the same row.
Wow, they're
It
nice.
looks like AI, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not.
that's so cool though.
It was from the Palm Beach Zoo.
Mm. So select it and put it in AI as a reference and see what you get. Yay.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good tour of the different generative AI features in Photoshop and Firefly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good job, Andrew.
Perfect. Hallelujah.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
it's
Andrew.
fun.
That was
Fun
great.
stuff.
Time for coffee.
Judy Robichek's typed in the chat, thanks for sharing your expertise, Andrew. Fascinating presentation. And Cynthia Gordon says, yes, thank you, Andrew. Richard Lewis is saying, yes, well done.
Thanks,
Oh, no,
everyone.
Richard Lewis says, awesome. Steve Goetz says, well done. Barbara Kohlberg says, thank you. Everybody's loving this.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thank you, Andrew.
Cool. All right, well, thank you so much. I will stop the recording. Oh, Mike Daniels says, thank you, much appreciated. Hannah says, thank you, amazing.
Thanks for the great questions, everybody, as well.
And so everybody knows how to get in touch with Andrew if they need to. You can all find him on Facebook.
Right. I do tutoring, so Photoshop, Lightroom, Adobe Firefly, Adobe Express. And yeah, if you're interested, the Photoshop and Lightroom group, you can even just go to Facebook, top left, search for Photoshop and Lightroom. It's about 40,000 members. And then if you're interested, there's the AI art and digital art group that you can join as well. There are two variations of those on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is a different reality than Facebook. LinkedIn, people keep joining the groups, but not posting much. So yeah, the Photoshop and Lightroom group on LinkedIn is like 18,500, but only a couple people post.
Also, follow Andrew on Behance. He has great images there.
I think that's Behance/Drew Cav, I believe.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
You can send me that information and I'll just copy and paste it into our follow-up email. When we send out the recording, I can tell people your links in Facebook and stuff like that, make it easy for people.
Yeah, I think I'll put it in the chat now too.
Good idea. Very good
And
idea.
if you want to follow me on Facebook, I am here. Should I post the links to the groups too?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so here's the new Photoshop and Lightroom group. Come join. And let me find the digital art.
You have more thank yous. Patrick Quinlan says, thank you so much to Absorb. Presented so well.
Thank you.
And then David Newey says, thanks. Looking forward to the recording.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
All right, well, thank you. And Lynn Freeman says, wonderful presentation. Thank you. So, all right, I'm going to turn off the recording now.